Buffalo Bills fans, mark this moment down, because the everybody eats offense we have all grown tired of watching might finally be getting buried for good. Fresh insider intel just dropped, and it centers on one man who could completely reshape this passing attack, DJ Moore. Stick around, because we are also diving into some seriously eyebrow-raising praise being heaped on Keon Coleman. And there is major injury news breaking just 1 week before training camp kicks off. This is a jam-packed breakdown, so let's get right into it. It all started on a well-known NFL Insider podcast earlier this week, the kind of show where the biggest names in football media sit down and start connecting dots. The conversation turned to the Buffalo Bills receiver room, and the consensus was clear. Stefon Diggs has been gone for a couple of seasons now, and this offense has been missing that true alpha receiver ever since. Sure, Khalil Shakir has racked up plenty of catches, but he never carried that unmistakable feel of a true number one, high-volume target. According to the insiders, that role now officially belongs to DJ Moore. Here's the twist that makes this whole storyline fascinating. DJ Moore was not that guy last season in Chicago. As Rome Odunze started to emerge and take over as the go-to option for the Bears, Moore found himself getting phased out of the game plan. Chicago essentially decided they could make the move, and that opened the door for Buffalo to swoop in and acquire him. Now, according to those in the know, Moore is expected to step right back into that alpha role in Buffalo, the exact role that made him must-watch television years ago. Let's be honest about expectations here. Nobody is claiming DJ Moore is going to match the video game numbers Stefon Diggs put up during his absolute peak seasons in Buffalo. But even a modest step up would be enormous for this offense. Consider this. Not a single wide receiver on the entire Buffalo roster was targeted more than 91 times last season. That is a shockingly low ceiling for what is supposed to be a Super Bowl contending offense. If DJ Moore approaches anywhere close to 130 or 140 targets, that would represent a massive shift in offensive identity, and it is not some wild fantasy. It is grounded in exactly what Moore has already done before. Rewind back to 2021 in Carolina when DJ Moore played under a familiar name to Bills fans, current head coach Joe Brady. That season serves as the best possible blueprint for what Buffalo could be getting. Moore finished with over 1,100 yards, averaged 12 yards per catch, and hauled in 4 touchdowns. But the volume numbers are where things get really wild. He led the entire NFL in targets that season. He ranked second in average depth of target, meaning the ball was consistently traveling deep down the field to him. He was first in the league in deep targets, first in red zone targets, first in end zone targets, and first in targets on the quarterback's initial read. In other words, DJ Moore was not just involved in that Carolina offense under Joe Brady, he was the engine that made the entire thing run. Now, skeptics will point to the last 2 seasons in Chicago as a red flag, and it is worth addressing that head-on. In 2024, DJ Moore was catching passes from a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams, who was still finding his footing at the NFL level. By 2025, Williams had improved significantly, but by then, Moore had already been pushed to the side as other weapons emerged. Go back one more year to 2023 when Moore played alongside Justin Fields. And the numbers tell a completely different story. Over 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, 96 catches, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 targets. That is elite production, and it happened without anything close to franchise quarterback play throwing him the football. And that brings us to the real headline here. Think about the list of quarterbacks DJ Moore has actually played with across his career. Rookie year struggles from Caleb Williams, a declining, worst version Cam Newton during his ill-fated second stint in Carolina. Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield during some of the rockiest stretches of their careers. Teddy Bridgewater. P. Walker. This is a receiver who has spent nearly his entire career catching passes from below average or rookie quarterback play, and he still managed to put together a resume with multiple 1,000-yard caliber seasons. Now, for the first time in his career, he gets to line up across from Josh Allen, arguably one of the most talented and accurate deep ball throwers in all of football. If you are a Bills fan and you are not excited about that pairing, it might be time to check your pulse. It is also worth noting that Josh Allen himself has been singing DJ Moore's praises since the trade went down. Allen has repeatedly called Moore one of the smoothest receivers he has ever been around, someone who can turn into a running back the moment the ball hits his hands. Capable of making defenders miss in the open field, Moore is not a one-dimensional deep threat either. He can win at every level of the field, whether that is a quick underneath route turned into a chunk gain or a 50-50 shot down the sideline. For a Buffalo offense that has lacked a true field-stretching, high-volume alpha since Diggs departed, DJ Moore checks every single box. So do yourself a favor, Bills fans. If you want to see DJ Moore cross the 1,000-yard mark this season, go ahead and manifest it. Smash that like button right now, because apparently that is how the algorithm gods decide these things. Now let's pivot to a storyline that is generating a very different kind of energy: Keon Coleman. The Bills' new wide receiver coach Drew Terrell recently offered up some glowing praise, calling Coleman one of the smartest football players he has ever been around at the position. And look, that quote deserves some serious side-eye, because based on what Keon Coleman has actually shown on the football field over the past 2 seasons, smartest player is not exactly the label that jumps to mind. Here is the uncomfortable truth: this is not a new pattern. Every single offseason since Coleman was drafted, the same script plays out. Glowing headlines, coaches praising his work ethic, reports claiming nobody on the roster had a better offseason than Keon Coleman. And then the season starts, and the production simply is not there. This year, we are getting the exact same treatment all over again, and it is getting difficult to take seriously. To be fair, respected outlets have pointed out that Coleman is the Buffalo Bill with the most riding on this upcoming season, and that assessment is completely accurate. Let's rewind to how we even got here. When Coleman was selected in the 2024 draft, it was already viewed by plenty of analysts as a questionable pick at the time, especially considering a certain star receiver was still on the board just one selection later. Fast forward to a few months ago, and even the Bills' own franchise ownership publicly acknowledged, around the time the previous head coach was let go, that the pick had not worked out the way they hoped. When your own organization is quietly admitting a former first-round caliber selection was a mistake, that tells you everything you need to know about where things actually stand. Now here we are, watching the entire organization scramble to patch things up. New head coach Joe Brady claiming the best thing to ever happen to Keon Coleman is having him as his coach. The new receivers coach calling him one of the smartest players he has ever seen. It all starts to feel a little too convenient, a little too rehearsed. Respected NFL reporters have noted that Coleman himself has admitted this spring that this season is essentially make or break for his future in Buffalo. His own words suggesting he understands he might not even be on the roster if things do not turn around. And the numbers back up the concern. Across 26 career games, Keon Coleman has averaged roughly 2.5 catches for under 40 yards per outing, with 8 total touchdowns. He was benched as a healthy scratch 4 separate times last season. He has been disciplined multiple times for tardiness. And according to recent metrics circulating among football analysts, Coleman ranks among the worst separators in the entire NFL over the last 3 seasons, meaning he consistently struggles to create the kind of space from defenders that good receivers need to be reliable options. Those are not the numbers of a player who deserves to be labeled one of the smartest at his position. Those are the numbers of a player fighting for his roster spot. So here is the real question Bills fans need to wrestle with. The front office loudly and publicly admitted this offseason that the receiver room needed serious reinforcements. That is exactly why they brought in DJ Moore via trade and added another new face to the receiver corps as well. If the Bills genuinely believed in Keon Coleman as a foundational piece, would they have needed to overhaul the position this aggressively? It is entirely possible that by the end of this season, Coleman finds himself as the fifth option in the receiver rotation, behind a revamped depth chart that includes names who have not exactly lit the world on fire either. This is a team that has struggled repeatedly to get the wide receiver position right. Whether we are talking about draft investments or free agent contracts that simply have not panned out. So, do you believe in a Keon Coleman turnaround this season, or are we all just getting fed the same recycled hype we have heard for 2 straight off seasons? That is a genuine debate worth having in the comments section below. Before we wrap things up, there is one more storyline Bills fans absolutely need on their radar heading into training camp. Injury updates on 2 players who could be difference makers if they can just stay on the field. Wide receiver Josh Palmer and edge rusher Michael Hoecht are reportedly on track to be fully healthy when training camp opens next week at St. John Fisher University in Pittsford, New York. Hoecht is working his way back from a torn Achilles suffered in a Week 9 matchup against Kansas City last season. Palmer, meanwhile, landed on injured reserve before the playoffs after battling a frustrating string of nagging injuries throughout his first year in Buffalo. This is exactly the kind of news Bills Mafia needs to hear. Last season's injury report became such a recurring storyline that entire lengthy breakdown videos were dedicated to it nearly every single week. That cannot happen again if this team wants to make a real championship push. The good news is both players are reportedly trending toward a clean bill of health as camp begins, which matters enormously for 2 very different reasons. For Michael Hoecht, the sample size from last season, though tiny at just 2 games, was undeniably impressive. He posted a well above average pass rush grade, recorded 2 quarterback hits, 3 sacks, 8 total pressures, and a tackle in extremely limited action. If a healthy Hoecht can provide that kind of disruptive presence as a rotational pass rusher, it could be a serious boost to Buffalo's front 7. Josh Palmer's situation carries a different kind of weight. His production last season left plenty to be desired, and there are real questions about whether his contract represents good value moving forward. But a full offseason of health, paired with a crowded and increasingly competitive receiver room, gives him every incentive to show he belongs. Whether he can actually deliver on that opportunity remains to be seen, but at the very least, health is no longer the excuse holding him back. So there you have it, Bills Mafia. DJ Moore looks primed to finally end the everybody eats era and become the true alpha receiver this offense has been missing since Stephon Diggs walked out the door. Keon Coleman is once again the subject of glowing praise that history suggests we should take with a healthy dose of skepticism. And with training camp just 1 week away, Buffalo is hoping their injury luck finally turns a corner after last season's brutal stretch. What do you think, Bills fans? Is DJ Moore about to have the breakout season fantasy analysts are sleeping on? Does Keon Coleman finally live up to the hype this time, or is this just more of the same recycled storyline? Drop your predictions in the comments section right now. Hit that like button if you are fired up for this season. And make sure you are subscribed so you never miss a single Buffalo Bills breakdown all off-season long. Let's go Buffalo, and we will see you in the next one.